Thank you. I'm Candace Davis. I'm one of the co-leaders of Indivisible Evanston. And Indivisible Evanston tonight, along with Indivisible Illinois, Indivisible Chicago Alliance, Indivisible Skokie, Morton Grove, Lincolnwood, Indivisible NWSOFA, and Indivisible DuPage are very pleased to host this meeting tonight, featuring ACLU of Illinois and their State Advocacy 101 training. Most of us tend to focus on what's going on at the national level, but especially now, our state legislatures are very, very important, always have been, but even more noticeable than before. Illinois is in a very important position both to set examples and to protect the rights at the state level and do everything they can to hold off some of the crap that's going on at the national level. So in addition, our personal impact can be greater at the state level in the national level just because of numbers. So our speaker tonight will explain that. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping matters. We'll be recording this meeting and we'll make it available after the meeting. If you have a question for the speaker, please put it in the chat, but write an ask in front of it so we don't lose it in the chat. Ask in front of the question and we'll keep track. And Kitty Connect, who's one of our leaders, will be keeping track of the questions and she'll be asking the questions after the main presentation. We also have several of our Indivisible leaders on the call who will also be monitoring the chat. And after our speaker is done and the Q&As are over, I'm going to be sharing some brief slides about our sponsoring Indivisible organizations with contact information for them and meeting information. And we'll share a link to those slides in the chat, and we'll also send them out tomorrow to anyone who registered for this meeting. So you don't need to be scribbling things down if you don't want to. So now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Kelly Yu of ACLU Illinois. Kelly is the Legislative Operations Associate with ACLU of Illinois. She reviews all the bills filed in the Illinois General Assembly every year, and she manages the bill analysis process for their advocacy team. Before joining the ACLU of Illinois in February of 2023, she worked at the ACLU of Colorado providing research and analytics support. We're very pleased to have her here with her expertise. So take it away, Kelly.
All right, so let's get started with our Advocacy 101 training today. And I will preface by saying I'm the generalist on the team, and we have specialists in the team handling the different issue areas such as criminal justice reform, reproductive rights, LGBTQ rights, and the family regulation system. So if you have questions that I'm not able to answer because I'm not an issue expert, I will bring your questions back to our specialist and get back to you on that. A little overview of what we're doing today. We're going to do some ground setting just to understand how the Illinois Legislative Assembly works. We'll talk a little bit about finding your elected officials. We'll then move on to a bit of the more nitty-gritty parts of how a bill becomes a law. And when and how do you advocate for a bill that you support? We'll then talk about different ways to advocate for bills and with some national updates, and hopefully we'll have some time for questions at the end. Before we get started, I want people to make some guesses. In 2023 to 2024, which is how long a legislative session in Illinois lasts for, it's a 2-year cycle, I want everyone to take a guess. How many bills do you think were filed in the Illinois legislature in the 2-year period? And you can type your answers in the chat box. Okay, I'm seeing 5K, 9,000, 300, 200. Okay, we're seeing a huge range. Okay, thank you for all the answers. We're gonna see the answer. It's 10K. Over 10,000 bills were filed in the Illinois legislature in a 2-year period.
Oh, God, we're in so much trouble.
And even more surprising is that out of the 10,000 bills that were filed, only 1,000 of them become law, which means the vast majority of bills that are filed in Illinois, they don't advance in the General Assembly and they don't become law in our state. This means if there's a bill that you really want to see become law, we need people's voices. We need people to advocate for these laws so it's being pushed up the priority list of legislators and they pay attention to it, move it across the finish line. A little bit about how many out of those bills that the ACLU of Illinois follows. This year, we're tracking around 6,000 of them that have civil rights and civil liberties impact. And out of the 6,000, we track 800 of them. Another question we often get is, who are my local elected officials? A lot of people might know who our senator is, Dick Durbin. You know your representative in the House, but a lot of people don't know who their state elected official is. So one of the resources available is the Illinois State Board of Elections District Locator. So here I typed in the address of the Evanston City Hall, and it would show you a list of federal, state, and local officials that represent you. It's a good way to get to know who represents you. And I will use Evanston as an example here. So if you live in Evanston, you would either have Representative Gable or Representative Gongorshowitz as your state representative. Your senator would be Laura Fine. I encourage you all to take a look at who your legislators are and read a bit about them, read about what their interest is, what bills do they file in the General Assembly. This would help you a lot when you advocate to them. Now we get to the most exciting part of today, which is how a bill becomes a law. We're going to use a bill from the last General Assembly session as an example. So HB 5431, it is a House bill that concerns prisoners who are pregnant. It limits, it stops prisons from constraining pregnant prisoners to ensure that they have dignity during their time incarcerated. It is a very extensive bill. It went through a lot of steps in the General Assembly. We're going to break it down step by step to see how a bill becomes a law. First, you see that the bill is called HB, which stands for House Bill. A bill can be a House bill or Senate bill, depending on where it was filed. This bill was filed in the House, so it's called a House bill. After a bill is filed, as you can see, this bill was filed by Representative Cassidy. We call them the bill sponsor. Whoever files the bill is the bill sponsor. Once it's filed, it's being read in the House first. It's more of a procedural process. Every bill gets read through, and after the first reading, it then goes to the Rules Committee. Think about a Rules Committee as a waiting room. You're at the doctor's office. You're sitting there, you're waiting. It's not your turn until you're being called up. That's what happens to a bill as well. All the bills go to the Rules Committee. Sometimes a bill can stay there for a whole 2-year period. Sometimes bills get out of the waiting room real quick. Later, we'll talk about what you can do to help make sure a bill that you want to see moves out of this waiting room. We can see another example of a bill that was stuck in the waiting room. So this was a bill that was trying to repeal the Reproductive Health Act, filed by Representative Holbrook. And as you can see, after it was referred to the Rules Committee, it never got out of the waiting room. So by the end of the 2-year cycle, the bill died, meaning that it did not become law, it did not advance in the General Assembly. Whereas this bill that we're going through today, it did make out of the waiting room. As you can see, this bill got out of the waiting room and was assigned to the Restorative Justice Committee. Every bill is being assigned to a committee depending on the issue areas that it handles. So this bill deals with prisoners in Illinois, so it was sent to the Restorative Justice Committee. After it's sent to a committee, usually there are around 10 committee members per committee. It will get a hearing in the committee. Then the members will take a vote on the bill. If there are more yeses than no, the bill passes out of the committee. So let's take a look at what a committee looks like. As you can see, this is the Restorative Justice Committee. At any time, there are many, many bills that are in. This is just a screenshot of what I found. And you can see there are at least 10. There are way more bills. What it means is even if it gets out of the waiting room, it's seeing a doctor. It doesn't mean you get the treatment you want as you wish. So there's a lot more advocacy that needs to be done at each step of the way to make sure a bill gets the vote and then gets out of the committee. So another step that is also important to note is amendments can get filed on the bills. Amendments happen because once a bill is introduced, people start talking about the bill. There might be stakeholders that would reach out to the bill sponsor saying, hey, I think your bill fails to address this issue. Could you amend the bill to take into consideration these factors? So amendments are a way for the bill sponsors to respond to different requests coming from stakeholders. And as you can see, for this bill, a floor amendment was filed. Other than floor amendments, there can be also committee amendments. So if a bill amendment is filed when the bill is still in the committee, it's called a committee amendment. If the amendment is filed after the bill gets out of the committee, it's called a floor amendment. One of the differences between the two amendments is if it's a floor amendment, it has to be referred back to the committee again, and the members have to take a vote on that amendment to make sure that it gets the discussion it needs, that everyone gets a voice in it before it gets back to the floor. So as you can see, this amendment was voted yes by the committee, and the amendment now becomes part of the bill, and it goes to the House for a third reading. The full House, all of the legislators in the House vote again on this bill, and if there are more yeses, it passes out of the floor. Next step, it arrives at the Senate. So every bill would go through the same process. If you start in the House and you go through all the process in the House, you move on to the Senate. If the bill started in the Senate, goes through all the process, it moves back to the House. Both chambers will have a chance to take a look at every bill that was filed. So in the Senate, it follows the same process. There's the more procedural first reading, and then it gets assigned. This time it's sent to the Special Committee on Criminal Law and Public Safety. This committee had a hearing on this bill, voted yes on the bill. It gets out of the committee, second reading, third reading, it passed. And as you can see, it passed both houses. It gets then sent to the governor approves it, it becomes a public act. So if there's one takeaway from this long process from today is that a bill gets from the finish to the end, there's a long process. It's months long, sometimes even years long. There's a lot of opportunities for us to weigh in on a bill, to advocate to the bill, and to, if it's not getting the momentum we need, there's a lot of opportunities for us to chime in. So now we're going to talk about who and when to advocate for a bill. So just now we talked about when a bill is stuck in a waiting room, which is the Rules or Assignments Committee. Sometimes the bill never progresses. Sometimes it moves us. What can we do as residents of the state if we want a bill to move forward? We need to talk to the leadership in the House or the Senate, telling them, hey, this bill has been stuck in Rules or the Assignments Committee for a long time. This is an important bill for our community. Can we get it assigned to a committee so it gets a hearing? If a bill gets assigned to a committee, but it's not being posted for a hearing, because as we saw in that screenshot earlier, at any time, a committee can have hundreds of bills that are waiting to be posted for a hearing. If that's the case, this time the person you're reaching out to would be the chairperson of the committee. So this, for example, this bill, this was assigned to the judiciary. The judiciary chairperson is Senator Michael Hastings. So Senator Hastings would be the person you reach out to asking for this bill to be posted for a hearing. Next, if a bill is posted for a hearing, meaning that it can get voted on anytime, this time you want to expand your outreach to every person that's in the committee. So in this judiciary committee, you can see there are 9 committee members. You would want to reach out to all 9 of them, telling them, please vote yes on this bill when this bill is called in committee hearing. So we talked earlier that once a bill passes out of committee, it goes back to the full floor for a vote. This time you are trying to reach out to all the members, making sure that they would vote yes on the bill. A priority would be people who are more uncertain on the fence about the bill. How can you tell who's more on the fence? So this bill, for example, you can see a lot of the legislators signed on to the bill as a bill sponsor, meaning they support this bill so much that they're willing to become a sponsor. So if I were to create an outreach list, I would be targeting people who are not a bill sponsor, reaching out to them and asking them to vote yes on this bill. One important thing to note is that we often reach out to legislators when we want them to do something. We want them to vote yes on this bill. But you can also thank a legislator afterwards. Thank you, Representative, for voting yes on this bill. It means a lot for our community because of these reasons. And because legislators often don't get thanks, they get a lot of requests, you're more likely to establish a good relationship with the legislator by sending them a simple thanks after a bill is passed. Now we're gonna talk a bit about the different ways to advocate. We're gonna start with witness slips, then move on to email, phone calls, in person, and social media. I'm sure a lot of you would have experience with it. So feel free to share in the chat how you've used these ways to advocate for bills you support. We'll start with witness slip. If you've never filled out a witness slip, think of it as a petition. It's an online petition. The difference is every time you sign on as a witness slip on a bill, it gets shown on the Illinois General Assembly website. Everyone can see that you filed as an opponent or as a support for this bill. Let's take a bill as an example to show why it's important to have witness slips. So as you see, this bill has over 300 people supporting it, over 200 people opposing it. So usually when a bill gets this substantive number of proponents and opponents, it's likely a quite contagious bill. What this happens is when this bill is being called for a hearing, there are legislators who might be on the fence of it. I don't know if I should vote yes or no. But if they see there are a lot of people filing in support of the bill, it gives them confidence that, oh, this might be a bill that my constituents want. This could be one of the many factors that would influence legislators who is on a fence to vote yes on the bill. One point to note is that when you fill out a witness slip, you fill out your name, the firm or the agency you represent. And if you're just filing as an individual, you put down self. But if you have the authority to represent a business or an agency, you could write the name of the business and agency. If, for example, a bill only has around 5 proponents and opponents, your agency would often be read out. But if in this case, there are over 300, then the chairperson would only say, there are over 300 proponents, over 200 opponents on this bill. So your name won't be read out, but it still means a lot because you're part of the number. One point I'll add about witness slip is it's often an easier way for people to advocate because not everyone is comfortable making a phone call or they don't know how to draft an email. Witness slip has a low entry barrier. Everyone can file a witness slip. So if you have friends who are interested in advocating for a bill, they've never done it, they're a little scared of doing it, encourage them to file a witness slip on a bill that matters to them. It's an easy way to get started, and you get a sense of satisfaction too once you see your names being listed on a General Assembly, and you know that legislators who are on the fence might be influenced because you put your name down in support of the bill. We'll then move on to emails and phone calls. It's very important to note that legislative staff, they track the number of phone calls and emails they get every day. And many times they would let the legislators know, hey, today I got 10 emails asking for us to support this bill. It brings the legislators' attention that people care about this bill and want their support on a bill. It is most effective if you are a constituent of the legislator. So if you live in Evanston and you are reaching out to Senator Fine because you are a constituent, that matters a lot more than if you reach out to a Chicago legislator. So if possible, prioritize legislators that represent you because your voice is amplified a lot more in this case. A lot of the times there are template languages that you can use to advocate for a bill, but we always encourage you to draft your own message. It's a lot more powerful when you bring in your own personal experience, talking about how this bill will impact you personally, impact your community. And it only takes a few minutes to personalize a message, but the power of it is a lot more stronger. Another chance to build relationship with your legislators is in person. I was very surprised when I was going to farmers market over the summer and I see legislators there. They would be introducing themselves, telling people they are the represented legislator there, and reach out to them. So in-person outreach doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to happen in an office. You could see your legislators many times in community events. It's a great chance to talk to them. You don't even have to talk about a bill. You could just tell them a general direction. For example, I would love to see reproductive rights being protected in Illinois. Can we make sure you vote yes on every bill that would protect reproductive rights? These general messages are great. Sometimes legislators would also have town halls or office hours, so it's a little bit more casual. You don't need an appointment to talk to them. And another option is some legislators also would schedule meetings, but this often is restricted to constituents. So again, prioritize legislators that you want to talk to. And this marks the end of the training. And I know folks were interested in hearing more about some of the national work that ACLU is doing. So I'll be sharing 4 updates here. And I would say that because I worked mostly on the legislative side, I do not know a lot of the ins and outs of the legal cases that National ACLU is doing. But if you have questions, feel free to post them in the chat. And if I can't answer them, I'll bring it to our legal team to make sure you get answered. So the first one is about a permanent resident, Mahmoud Kali, who was a Columbia graduate student and was detained by ICE and threatened deportation over his participation in protests about the war in Gaza. ACLU joined a bunch of other organizations in this case, and the court recently ruled that the case should move forward in New Jersey instead of Louisiana after the Trump administration tried to transfer the case to Louisiana. The second update I will share is about the Alien Enemies Act. So this was an act that was last revoked during World War II to justify the internment of people of Japanese ancestry. A judge temporarily blocked the Trump administration from invoking this act to deport immigrants, but we are still keeping a close eye on this case. Next one is about the Department of Education after the Trump administration issued an executive order to dismantle the department. We released a press release and have worked closely with other organizations in calling this out because of the impact that the Department of Education plays in protecting the civil rights and civil liberties of a lot of the students, especially from marginalized communities in this country. The last update is coming from the ACLU of Illinois. It happened just a few days ago where we joined the National Immigrant Justice Center in an enforcement action about ICE, where they violated an agreement back from 2022, which restricts how ICE activity in the state. So the filing that from a few days ago shows that ICE was detaining US citizens, people who were not arrested in the warrant. And this is at the very beginning of the case, so I don't have a lot of details to share, but I hope everyone will keep a close eye on this case as well. So this marks the end of my training presentation. Thank you everyone for listening, and happy to take questions now.
Hi, Kelly, this is Kitty Connect. I think they'll put me on the spotlight next to you in a minute. There we go. There we go. First of all, I just want to say how sorry I am about the disruption and that I really admire your ability to hang in there and keep going. And we thank you very much. I'll start
first with some of the questions about Illinois that I saw. There were actually a whole cluster of questions about the committees, and what they do, and who's on the rules committee, and what does the rules committee do, for example. So I was wondering if you could just kind of, since so many people asked about it, if you could just give us a little bit of a verbal overview on what the committee structure is and how they function.
Sure. The Rules and Assignments Committee are mostly controlled by the leadership in both chambers. So, in the case of Illinois, because Democrats are the majority party in both the House and the Senate, so the Democratic leadership in the chamber controls what bills get stuck in the waiting room and what bills leave the waiting room and get assigned to committee, which is why if you're seeing a bill stuck in the waiting room for so long, you should be talking to leadership, talking to the House leadership for a House bill, Senate leadership for Senate bill, asking them to get the bill assigned.
Okay. I guess it's a related question is how to speed up the process, or just, I mean, not for me as an individual, but are there ideas that ACLU has for making the process go faster and more smoothly in Illinois?
Mhm. So legislators are very used to seeing organizations like the ACLU or other advocacy organizations. We're in Springfield all the time. We try to talk to legislators, talk to leadership to move bills we want to see. But the truth is, our voices don't matter as much as regular residents. It means a lot more when constituents talk to their legislators, asking them to advance a bill, because they don't hear from you often. So your voice carries a lot more weight, which means we have 200 people in this room. If there's a bill that you really want to see advance and it's not moving, 200 of you reaching out to legislators will mean a lot more than the ACLU team, the 5 of us, going to a legislator day after day asking them to vote for a bill.
Right, I see. I guess another question was, and I apologize, I didn't write down the name of the person who asked it, is about where do the bills come from? Who creates them?
Great question. Sometimes they come from directly from constituents. There will be constituents who go to a legislator because usually a very specific situation they encounter. It could be an insurance issue. It could be issue with a cemetery, road conditions, bridges. Legislators would then work closely with constituents to draft a bill. Sometimes a bill comes from state or local government agencies. They might be encountering an issue. They want that issue fixed. So they go to a legislator hoping to get that issue fixed. Sometimes it comes from advocacy groups like the ACLU. We will have bill ideas and we will reach out to legislators hoping to turn that bill idea into a bill. So it comes from a lot of different ways. And you should know that you also have a right to talk to your legislator about an issue that you think could be a good bill.
Right. Great. Thank you for clearing that up. What are your thoughts on the role of lobbyists in the Illinois legislature?
There's a stereotype. When we talk about lobbyists, we're thinking about big oil lobbyists. We're thinking people who make 500K a year and they go to Springfield and talk to legislators. That is the case for some lobbyists. But there are a lot more lobbyists, such as those who work at the ACLU, Planned Parenthood, a lot more other organizations. They don't make big money, but they become a lobbyist because these are issues they care about. They enjoy talking to legislators. They enjoy writing bills, moving a bill forward. That's why they became a lobbyist. I work closely with lobbyists every day, and I can tell you a lot of them really love their job. And I would also say that you don't have to be a full-time lobbyist. Even if you're a regular resident in Illinois, you can be a lobbyist and go talk to legislators. I've seen a lot of people, a lot of students, they're doing what a lobbyist do. They just don't call themselves a lobbyist.
Hmm. In what circumstances do lobbyists get asked to write bills in Illinois?
Great questions. In the case of ACLU, we usually write the bills that we want to advocate for. We then send a bill draft to the legislators and make amendments to it. For the cases such as a constituent reaching out to a legislator, most likely the constituent will not know how to write a bill. So the legislator might involve other lobbyists in helping with that. One point I'll also say is that you don't need a lobbyist to write a bill. The General Assembly has a small department that works with legislators in writing a bill. So a legislator could have a bill idea. They don't have to write it, send it over to the department. That department would also be able to write the bill out for the legislator.
Okay. Let's see. I think there were some questions about how best to influence your electeds in Illinois, and I think you answered that question after it was asked a few times. Then there were a few questions about witness slips also. One is, do federal bills have witness slips, or is this an Illinois thing?
I am not sure. When I was working in Colorado, there was not a witness slip system. So I think it's really state to state dependent. I am not sure about the federal level.
Okay. Let's see. Jenna asked, how much personal information is displayed on the website when you fill out a witness slip?
Great question. When you fill it out, you do need to put your name, your address, email address. But when it's being displayed, it's just your name and if you choose to represent an organization. So don't worry that your address or your phone number will be exposed. That won't be the case.
Okay, that is not going to be public information on the website. Okay. Let's see. Kathy asked, do you keep a rapid response list for particular bills that needing witness slips or quick action that Indivisible could share with our members?
We do updates on our website mostly when a bill is being scheduled for hearing and we want to get witness slips. We'll do that on our website. And if anyone's interested, I can share the link out later.
Okay. Let's see. Here's another question. Where would we look to find a calendar with all the dates when legislators are in session versus in recess?
Also a great
question. Yeah.
Let me try to share my screen and I can walk people through. So this is the main website of the Illinois General Assembly. So there's the Senate section, the House section. They each have their own schedules. So there could be a day where the Senate is in session, but the House is not in session. To know which dates there are, you can click into schedule, spring session schedule, and you can get all the dates here. So I will highlight a few things. So we'll scroll down to, so you would see this week, the Senate is not in session, but the House is in session. So that always happens. There are also deadlines that happen in both the Senate and the House that I didn't talk about earlier. So this past Friday, it was the deadline for Senate bills to get out of committees. It was also the deadline for House bills to get out of committee. And throughout the year, there are different deadlines. It's called a deadline, but there's always exemption. If a bill doesn't get out by the 21st, it's not completely dead. The bill can still move across the finish line. It's just a preference deadline. Like it's best if your bill moves out of committee by the 21st, but if not, there's still a chance.
Okay. And I don't know if this is the same. This might be a repetitious question to what you just said, but when Jazz answered or asked, when a bill is stalled or dies in committee, can it ever be refiled?
Yes, the same bill can be filed session after session. So if a bill was filed in 2023, it died because it didn't advance before the deadline, it could be refiled again in 2025. And in fact, we see that happen all the time. There are legislators that file bills trying to restrict reproductive rights every year. It's the same bill language. We see it all the time. It's one of their ways to show that they are anti-choice. And it's very annoying because it's the same bill and you know that it won't advance, but they have a right to do it. And every legislator is able to do that.
Okay. Constance asked, compared to other states, how hardworking would you say the Illinois legislature is? For example, Texas doesn't meet very often.
Fun question. When I was in Colorado, there's a limit on how many bills a legislator can file. We don't have that limit in Illinois. A legislator can file as many bills as they want. On one hand, it's great. If there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed, they can do it. But on the other hand, it's very overwhelming for people who work in the system, but also for regular people who want to keep track of it. It makes it become very inaccessible to know what's happening in the General Assembly. And it's also one of the reasons why only 10% of the bills make it to the finish line. So I would say volume-wise, working in Illinois is difficult. But at the same time, Illinois has a very strong civic engagement mentality. I see a lot more constituents going all the way to Springfield trying to talk to legislators. You always see groups going to Springfield to advocate for their cause. And it's something I don't see as often in Colorado. So it's something we all should be proud of. Whatever the issue area people are interested in, you always see people passionately advocating for it.
Okay. All right. Well, if you don't mind, I'll turn now to some questions about the national legislative agenda. And one that was asked by Steve way back was about whether the ACLU can get or will get involved with defending universities from the onslaught of lawsuits and the pulling of funding by the administration.
When the campus protests first started, we have been doing a lot of monitoring, contacting school officials, first reminding them that students have a First Amendment rights. And when we start to see schools not respecting that right, we would reach out directly to schools. We send our staff to go monitor the protests happening. And fortunately in Illinois, the situation is not as worse as we've seen in other states. There has been some issues in Champaign that we've seen. We've get involved with it. So we did not file any lawsuit, but we're taking different avenues in talking to school officials, talking to student groups, student leaders to make sure they have a right to protest.
Okay, thanks. Another question, and I'm sorry, I didn't note down who asked it, was about immigration. What can you tell us about ACLU Illinois' fight to, for example, keep ICE from out of Cook County Jail and to make sure that our police are not forced to do ICE's work for it?
One of the most important legislation in the state protecting immigrant rights, it's called the Trust Act. What it does is it prevents local law enforcement from cooperating with ICE. So an Evanston police cannot call ICE and tell them there's someone about to be released. I don't think they are a citizen. Come detain them. This is prohibited. But what we've seen is a lot of bills filed trying to repeal the Trust Act or make it worsen. And on the same hand, on the other hand, there are a lot of bills trying to strengthen it. For example, expanding the Trust Act to a school context. So it's something, if you are passionate about immigrants' rights, you should definitely follow development of the Trust Act. One other thing I would share is around a few weeks ago, there was a legislator who used to work in the Illinois Department of Corrections who made a tweet saying, if you're a local law enforcement officer and you, because of the Trust Act, you're not able to contact ICE, let me know. I will help you. That is certainly against the Trust Act. It's against the law. But it shows you that the Trust Act is under a lot of pressure under the political environment. So you should let your legislators know that the Trust Act should be protected at all costs.
Okay. Great idea. Judy asked about the issue of the rendition of some people to Venezuela. I heard that Venezuela is suing El Salvador, I'm sorry, Venezuelans in rendition to El Salvador. I heard Venezuela is suing El Salvador for the treatment of the people that we illegally sent over there. Is there anything that we can do as American citizens?
I believe the national ACLU office has been following it, but here in Illinois, we did not follow it closely. So I don't have much to add.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see. I think that's all the time we have for questions. Unfortunately, Candace has some announcements to make, so I will turn it over to her. And again, thank you so much, Kelly, for sharing all your expertise and for putting up with the nonsense.
I would say this is not the best training I've ever given. I am still shaking a little bit, so I'm sorry for stumbling on my words and not giving the best training, but I appreciate all the questions. I appreciate the response and engagement, and I hope you all found this helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And don't be too hard on yourself. Is Candace ready?
Turn my audio on. Yes, I am, but we do have some time. So if you want to go through your questions, I'll go through our slides and spend some time on that. But if you want to check and see unasked questions, you know, and my favorite question is, you know, what's the most effective thing we can do? I always love that question. I guess I need to put my thing. Oh, there we go. Put me in the spotlight. I am going to share a few slides with you all about our hosting organizations. Let me first get them up here. Slideshow. Just so you know who we are and how you can reach us. There we go. Can you see those slides?
We can see them, Candace.
Yes.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. Thanks. So the meeting tonight was sponsored by Indivisible Evanston, Indivisible DuPage, NWSOFA, a division of Indivisible, Indivisible Illinois, Chicago, and Skokie, Morton Grove, Lincolnwood. The first group that is Indivisible Illinois, and someone asked me tonight in the slides how to find a local group. And I suggested they start with Indivisible Illinois because it's an umbrella organization for the whole state with about 80,000 members and growing, with the general purpose of holding elected officials accountable and fighting for progressive policies. So there is a list on this link. There's a link to a list of events for Indivisible Illinois. Jackie's going to put a link to these slides in the chat. And we will also be sending a link to the slides out tomorrow. So don't feel like you need to scribble everything down. And we will give you an edited version of the recording. That may take a little time, so sorry if it takes a while. The other group is NWSOFA, which is a chapter of Indivisible located in the land beyond O'Hare. They've got about 7,800 members, and they picked up a big group nationally too. They have 34 all volunteer leaders. Don't know how they get everybody so active, but I admire them, that manage their 10 progressive issues teams. And they have meetings and events monthly. They've got a Stand with Women group. They've got pizza nights. Oops, sorry. Let me go back to they have a Restore Our Democracy group. They've got a terrific fiscal and economic policy group. They attend school boards. They co-hosted this meeting. They've got a climate change group, gun violence prevention. They do coffee and conversation from Monday to Friday, which I also absolutely admire. And they've got an unhappy hour on Friday nights. And they participate with Truth Brigade Illinois on our Truth Brigade sandwich every other Friday. And the Equity Project, and they do monthly legislative updates and a Trump litigation update. So they are very active. What I didn't give you there, and Bill, if you would put it in the chat, is a link to your website. I realized it wasn't on this chart. So give everybody a link to get to all your goodies. The third group is a newer group, but one that has become very active, Indivisible, Skokie, Morton Grove, Lincolnwood. And they're out there to share information, follow legislation, and support our communities. They've got a Facebook group. The link is here. That's the best way to work with them. They're co-sponsoring with us and several other groups, Northbrook Tesla dealership demonstration on April 26th at noon. We're looking forward to that one. Indivisible DuPage, where Linda is from, she's been helping tonight, was launched to hold elected officials accountable in DuPage County. And they're trying to create progressive towns, and they're focused on fighting the attempted dismantling of our democracy by the Trump-Musk administration, as are many of us. They have a Facebook site, a Blue Sky account, an email account, a website. And their upcoming events are, they're doing part of the Hands Off mass mobilization in Lisle, and Indivisible Naperville is hosting that one. So that Saturday of the Hands Off mass mobilization, Saturday, April 5th, they'll be out in Lisle. We'll be working with Indivisible Chicago downtown on that day. And they're also having a in-person meeting at 2 o'clock the next day on Sunday, April 6th. Indivisible Chicago and the Indivisible Chicago Alliance, which most of us are part of, is a national leader in the grassroots movement to advance progressive values, influence elected officials, and win elections. And I've got their links here to their website, their Facebook page, their Blue Sky account, their Linktree, which has their other social media accounts. And they are co-hosting this Sunday, the protest for trans visibility downtown at 1 o'clock. And on April 5th, what we talked about was the Hands Off protest at noon downtown. Indivisible Evanston is our purpose. We're trying to resist the GOP extremist agenda, elect Democrats, and just fight the good fight. So we do legislative advocacy, electoral politics, and voter outreach. We also strive to educate our members on critical issues such as this legislative process. And we put out a weekly newsletter that I would encourage you all to sign up for. The link to the sign up is here. We've got a website, we've got a Facebook, a Blue Sky, Instagram account, and we're always looking for volunteers. So we'd be happy to have you join us on that. And that's our sponsors, which we'll share those slides with you, share the information. If you aren't part of an Indivisible group, please join one. There's a lot of terrific information available that way. And now, Kitty, we've got a little time. Do you want to go back and ask some of those questions?
Okay, I think there was one more very pithy question at the national level, if you don't mind, Kelly. And it says, even when the courts tell Trump he did something illegal, he's ignoring them. How can the courts actually pressure him to undo what he's done? And I guess I would add, and what can be our role in that?
Going to protest always works. I don't know if people have seen images of Bernie Sanders and AOC rallying in Colorado. I would imagine if I was a judge and I see people mobilizing in huge groups, that would make me think. And so the court does what it does, but we as individuals have so much more to do. and especially on a state level. Things on the federal level can seem so hopeless. No matter what we do, it's not happening. But we can strengthen protections in our state. We passed the reproductive health rights in Illinois before Roe v. Wade was overturned because we knew it might be coming. And we passed the Trust Act to protect immigrants in our state before Trump started deporting people. So there's so much more that can be done on the state level, which is why I hope this training will motivate you to pay more attention into what's happening on the state level.
Great. I think I'm motivated for sure. I think that we've at least covered all the questions, even though I didn't read them all out. I think that
Okay.
Kelly has actually covered them. So
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you very much. And we apologize for the disruption. Clearly, I should have set it up as a webinar, and I apologize for that. I don't usually worry about that if it's not a controversial topic, but apparently Illinois legislation is a controversial topic, and perhaps the ACLU is enough of a target. So I apologize. Next time we'll do it as a webinar. So there'll be a little bit more security. We will follow up on this to see what we can do about the disruption that happened. Some of those people have been reported to Zoom, and they had to register to get in unless it was a true, someone very clever overcoming all of our settings. So don't know, but we do apologize, and we thank you so very much for speaking on this important topic. And Kelly, we'd love to have you back with more updates. I think we want to do more following legislation in Illinois and knowing what we can do about it, witness slips and even testimony, and even if there's needed legislation, getting behind sponsoring it. You can do that, work with our legislatures to sponsor something that's needed. So we really look forward to working with you on that and on future projects. So thank you so much for coming, and thanks everybody else for coming as well.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you.